Are you exhausted trying to keep up with everyone else's timeline? What if the real problem isn't your life, but the expectations you're holding onto? Today, I'm going to show you how to break free from the pressure and finally find true balance and fulfillment. Everyone says they want balance. Everyone says they want fulfillment. But most people live in a constant state of conflict, pulled in different directions, overwhelmed by responsibilities, and chasing goals that don't even align with who they truly are. They go through life checking boxes, reaching milestones, and meeting expectations. But deep inside, there's a quiet discomfort, a subtle feeling that something is missing. They appear to be doing everything right, yet something still feels wrong. Balance isn't about doing less. Fulfillment isn't about doing more. Both are about doing the right things, in the right order, for the right reasons. Most people stay busy, not balanced. They're active, but not aligned. They mistake movement for meaning and progress for peace. So they spend years in motion, but never really arrive anywhere. The truth is, balance isn't something you stumble upon. It's something you build. It's something you choose. Fulfillment doesn't just happen, it's a result. It comes from living in harmony with your values, your purpose, your energy, and your truth. And most people never experience it, not because it's unreachable, but because they never take the time to define it for themselves. They chase someone else's idea of success. They follow a pace that doesn't fit their life. They carry responsibilities that don't belong to them. They say yes when they mean no. They ignore what they need to meet someone else's expectations. Over time, this disconnection creates tension, a quiet strain that shows up as burnout, frustration, emptiness, and anxiety. But it doesn't have to be that way. You can design a life that feels whole. A life where ambition and peace can exist together. Where growth doesn't come at the expense of your well-being. Where professional wins don't lead to personal loss. This is not a fantasy. It's a framework. And it's built on clear choices, healthy habits, and self-awareness. Because balance and fulfillment aren't goals you chase, they're outcomes you create through clarity, intention, discipline, and alignment. And if you don't choose them on purpose, life will make the choice for you. Your time will be filled by others. Your attention will be pulled in every direction. Your energy will be depleted. And one day, you'll realize you've built a life that looks successful, but doesn't feel that way. You deserve more. Not just more comfort or more achievements. You deserve depth. You deserve peace. You deserve to feel whole. And you can. But it won't happen by chance. It won't happen by default. It will happen only when you decide to make it happen. When you choose to believe that balance is essential. That fulfillment isn't a luxury, it's a necessity. That your life is not meant to be a race you struggle through. It's meant to be a meaningful journey you intentionally build. This isn't about lowering your standards. It's about raising them, refusing to win in one area while falling apart in another. It's about expanding what's possible, not just professionally, but personally, emotionally, spiritually. Those who live the most complete lives aren't the ones with the most time or the fewest challenges. They're the ones who learned how to live well. They knew how to create space. How to protect their energy. How to say no to what didn't fit, and yes to what truly mattered. They showed up for their loved ones without losing themselves. They didn't just build full lives, they built fulfilling ones. That's what this message is about, 8 ways to create balance and fulfillment. Not abstract ideas, but practical principles you can live by. Principles that bring clarity help you reset and put you back in control. Because no matter how busy you are, no matter how overwhelmed you feel, you can rebuild, you can reset, you can create something better. The first way to build balance and fulfillment is to get brutally clear on your values. Not the values you think you should have. Not the ones someone told you to care about. Your real values, the ones that matter when no one's watching. The ones that guide your decisions when life gets tough. The ones that define whether or not you're proud of how you're living. Most people don't live by values. They live by default. They react to life. They adjust under pressure. They adapt to whatever's in front of them. They become skilled at surviving, but forget how to lead themselves. Because they never take the time to define what really matters. They end up chasing everything but the things that truly count. And that's where imbalance begins, when your actions don't reflect your beliefs. When your daily life doesn't match the things you say are important. That gap creates stress, exhaustion, and frustration, not because you're failing, but because you're out of alignment. If you say family matters, but you're never present, you feel it. If you say health matters, but you haven't prioritized it, you feel it. If you say integrity matters, but you compromise it for convenience, you feel it. That tension doesn't always show up as guilt. Sometimes, it shows up as emptiness. As a quiet inner voice saying, something's not right. You don't have to be perfect. You don't have to get everything right. But you do have to be honest. What do you truly value? What really matters to you? What are you working toward? Who are you becoming? And do your choices reflect that? This isn't a motivational exercise. It's a lifestyle audit. If you want lasting balance, you need a solid foundation, and that foundation is your values. They are your internal compass. They help you say yes to what counts and no to what doesn't. They shape your decisions and simplify your life. Because the truth is, life will always pull at you. Work will always demand more. People will always expect something. Opportunities will keep coming. But if you're not anchored in your own values, clearly and confidently, you will be tossed around by everything around you. And here's the real danger. If you don't live by your values, you'll end up living by someone else's. You'll inherit their pace. You'll absorb their definition of success. You'll follow their direction. Before you know it, you'll be living a life that isn't really yours. You can be achieving and still be unhappy. You can be winning and still feel empty. Because fulfillment doesn't come from what you have, it comes from who you are when no one is watching. And if you're not proud of that person, nothing you gain will fill the gap. So, define your values, not just in words, but in behaviors. What does it look like to live them out? What will you give up to honor them? What boundaries do they set? What commitments do they require? Values aren't about comfort, they're about clarity. They are your filter for every decision. If peace matters, stop inviting chaos. If family matters, stop glorifying overwork. If health matters, stop ignoring it. If honesty matters, stop compromising for acceptance. Every time you compromise your values, you fracture your sense of wholeness. Wholeness is not perfection, it's integrity. It's when your inner life and outer life match. When your actions align with your beliefs. You won't always get it right. But that's not the point. The point is alignment. You'll feel more alive falling short in alignment than you ever will succeeding out of alignment. Values bring clarity. They shape your schedule. They help you set your goals. They guide your relationships. They determine where your energy flows. Once you know what matters, you stop wasting time on what doesn't. Clarity is freedom. When you're clear on your values, you don't need approval. You don't need to explain your boundaries. You don't need to compare yourself to others. You know your purpose. You know what success looks like to you. And that allows you to live fully, without guilt, without shame, without apology. But clarity doesn't come on its own. You have to make space for it. Step away from the noise. Ask yourself honest questions and listen to the answers. What season of life are you in? What matters most right now, and what always matters? What do you need more of? What do you need less of? What are you willing to release in order to build something better? Once you have your answers, write them, speak them, own them, then begin to rebuild. Start with your routine. Then your habits. Then your energy. Piece by piece, your life begins to reflect your truth. That's where balance starts. Not in a perfect calendar. Not in equal time for everything. But in knowing your time goes toward what matters. Fulfillment comes from alignment. Balance comes from clarity. And clarity begins with values. Define them. Live by them. Build your life around them. Because the moment you stop living by accident and start living by design, you take back control. And once you have that control, everything changes. It requires guarding your energy like it's your life, because in many ways, it is. Your energy is your power. It fuels your decisions, your discipline, your relationships, your creativity, your clarity. Yet most people give it away without a second thought. They wake up and immediately start reacting. Their day begins with noise, with obligations, with other people's problems. With the television. With emails. And before they've even taken a breath for themselves, their energy has already been hijacked. They spend time doing things they don't believe in. For people they don't respect. On schedules they didn't design. And then they wonder why they feel depleted. Why they're tired, even if they didn't accomplish anything meaningful. Why burnout keeps knocking. No matter how much they rest. It's not always your schedule that's the problem. It's how your energy is being spent. You can have a full calendar and still feel alive. If what you're doing aligns with your mission. But you can have an empty day and still feel exhausted. If everything you do feels out of sync with who you are. Energy management isn't just about sleep or rest. It's about boundaries. It's about alignment. It's about being honest. What drains you? What fuels you? What renews you, and what breaks you down? Then, make decisions that honor that truth. Even if it makes other people uncomfortable. You cannot create a fulfilling life while constantly violating your own needs. You can't stay balanced while saying yes to everything. You can't stay grounded if every time you feel tired, you push harder. Instead of asking why you're running on empty. You need boundaries, not because you're selfish, but because you're responsible. You need to protect your morning, not because it's sacred, but because it sets the tone. You need to say no, not because you're rude, but because you're committed. You need to honor your energy, not because you're fragile, but because you're focused. Start with the basics. Who do you give your time to? What kind of conversations are you having daily? Are they lifting you up or pulling you down? Sharpening you or dulling your edge? Aligned with your growth or disguised procrastination? What are you consuming? The things you read. The words you hear. The messages you repeat to yourself. Every input affects your output. Garbage in, garbage out. Wisdom in, clarity out. Discipline in, momentum out. What you feed your mind determines how your mind operates. Now look at your habits. How do you begin your day? With intention or with noise? Do you command the first hour? Or give it away to distractions? Because that first hour isn't just time. It's your foundation. It's when your nervous system calibrates. When your focus sets in. It's when you choose who you're going to be today. And if you give it away, to emails, to chaos, you're handing over the driver's seat. You're letting the world steer your day. And once you do that, balance becomes nearly impossible. You need rituals, anchors, moments in your day that bring you back to center. Maybe it's movement. Maybe it's solitude. Maybe it's prayer. Maybe it's writing. Or just breathing. But it must be yours. Something no one can take. Something that reminds you you're not just a task doer. Not just a provider or responder. You're a human being. With a soul. With rhythm. With limits. With a need for renewal. That doesn't make you weak. It makes you wise. Because strength without recovery is a short game. It burns bright, then burns out. But strength with rhythm? That lasts. That endures. That creates something sustainable. Something real. You don't have to be exhausted to be effective. You don't have to be overextended to be accomplished. You don't have to be everything to everyone to feel worthy. You can protect your energy and still be powerful. You can rest without guilt. You can say no without apology. You can choose calm without sacrificing progress. Because energy isn't about doing more. It's about doing the right things. With the right intensity. At the right time. It's about cycles. Peaks. Recovery. Focus. Disconnection. Reflect. If you don't design your life to honor those things, you will pay the price. Burnout doesn't usually come from doing too much. It comes from doing too much of the wrong things. For too long. Without support, without margin, without meaning. Balance isn't about doing less. It's about eliminating what doesn't belong. So take an honest inventory. What are your top energy drains? Which ones are you tolerating to avoid conflict? Which ones are you justifying as temporary? Which ones are stealing from your health, your peace, your family? What would change if you cut that out? What would change if you protected that space? What would change if you stopped sacrificing yourself? For appearances, approval, or obligations that aren't even yours. You're not here to live tired. You're not here to barely make it. You're not here to burn out chasing success. You're here to live well. To live full. To live present. And that begins by protecting the very thing that fuels everything else. Your energy. One of the greatest enemies of balance isn't chaos. It's disconnection. Disconnection from yourself. From your inner voice. From your purpose. From the present moment. Because when you are disconnected, even a peaceful life feels heavy. Even a simple day feels chaotic. Even surrounded by people, you feel alone. People think imbalance is always about time. That if they just had more hours, everything would make sense. But more time doesn't fix a life that's out of alignment. You can clear your calendar and still feel buried. You can go on vacation and still feel restless. Because the exhaustion isn't always physical. It's emotional. It's spiritual. It's coming from a life out of sync with your soul. You have to learn how to reconnect. Not just with your goals, but with your truth. You have to know who you are. Underneath all the noise. Underneath the roles, the titles, the ambition, the hustle. Beneath it all. There's a voice. A rhythm. A truth that doesn't scream. But it speaks. And when you finally slow down to listen, you'll hear it. It's the part of you that knows when something feels off. Even if you can't explain why. The part that knows when you're forcing. When you're pretending. When you're settling. It stays quiet for years. But it never disappears. Most people never give themselves space to hear it. They fill every moment with noise. With activity. With distraction. Because silence is confronting. But if you want a life that feels balanced, not just looks balanced, you must create time for reconnection. That doesn't mean disappearing from responsibility. It means stop disappearing from yourself. Carve out space to be honest. To check in. To remember who you are. And what you want. You need reflection. Solitude. Quiet time that's not about productivity, but about presence. Because if you don't reconnect with yourself regularly, you'll keep drifting. And the longer you drift, the harder it is to remember where you were even trying to go. Reconnection doesn't always mean big answers. Sometimes it's just space to breathe, to grieve, to feel, to dream. Sometimes it's not about solving problems. It's about remembering. You're not a machine. You don't have to earn rest. Your worth isn't measured in check marks. When you create that space, you begin to soften. You come home to yourself. And from that place, decisions become clearer. Pressure feels lighter. Clarity returns. So ask yourself, when was the last time you sat with yourself? Without an agenda? When was the last time you checked in? Without judgment? When did you get honest about how you're really doing? Not just what you say to keep the machine running? That kind of connection takes courage. Because when you sit with your truth, you'll feel what you've been avoiding. You'll remember what you've buried. But it's not weakness. It's the beginning of alignment. The beginning of clarity. And clarity gives you power. It shows you where you've been performing. Where you've been pretending. Where you've said yes out of fear. Or avoided vulnerability by overcompensating. When you see those things, not with shame, but with compassion, you can finally begin to shift. And you must shift. Because if you don't reconnect with your truth, your life will always feel divided. You'll achieve, but not feel it. Succeed, but never rest. Perform, but never belong. Because your outer world won't match your inner world. And that dissonance will rob you of peace. No matter how perfect things look. So create space to listen again. Not just when you crash, but consistently. Build rhythms that slow you down. Invite you to breathe. Remind you to ask better questions. Not, what should I be doing? But, who am I becoming? Not, how much more can I take on? Not, what will they think? But, what do I believe? When you live from that place, your schedule might still be full. But your soul won't be frantic. You'll still work hard. But not like you're running from something. You'll still pursue goals. But you won't need them to prove anything. Because now, you're not disconnected. You're grounded. And grounded people are balanced people. People don't burn out because life is easy. They burn out because they're living out of sync with themselves. So pause. Reconnect. Find quiet. Be honest with yourself. From that calm, grounded place, begin again. Not by fixing your outer world first, but by rebuilding from the inside out. Creating balance and fulfillment isn't just about managing your schedule or protecting your energy. It's about realizing that life moves in seasons. And if you expect each season to feel the same, look the same, or deliver the same results, you'll always feel off track. You'll always think something's wrong, when really, nothing is broken. You're just expecting a summer harvest in the middle of winter. Most people treat life like a machine, always running, always producing, always pushing forward. But life isn't mechanical. It's cyclical. It moves in rhythms, with ebbs and flows, highs and lows. And when you ignore that rhythm, you create imbalance. You push when you should rest. You force when you should reflect. You strive when you're meant to slow down. And eventually, that imbalance wears you down. There will be seasons of deep focus and intense effort. Those times matter. They build and move things forward. But just as vital are the seasons of reflection, rest, healing, and release. These quieter times prepare you. They restore your strength. They reset your mind and body from within. If you don't recognize the season you're in, you'll judge yourself by the wrong standards. You'll feel guilty for needing rest. You'll feel ashamed for moving more slowly. You'll compare your pace to others who are in a completely different phase, and that comparison will steal your peace, your motivation, and your clarity. Imagine judging a tree's health in winter by whether it's producing fruit. You'd think it's failing. But it's not. It's conserving. It's gathering strength. It's preparing for spring. And if you cut it down because it didn't bloom fast enough, you'd destroy something that was simply not meant to bloom in that moment. You are no different. There will be times you lack motivation, not because you're lazy, but because your inner self needs something else. There will be seasons when your best looks different. Not worse, just different. Sometimes, growth is happening under the surface, quietly and invisibly, but powerfully. You won't know how to trust that quiet growth unless you learn to slow down and listen. And listening means asking, what season am I in? What is being asked of me right now, not by the world, but by the truth inside me? Am I in a planting season where I need to build small, steady habits? A harvesting season where I should act on the momentum I've built? A pruning season where old things need to fall away to make room for better? Or a season of rest where my only job is to heal and prepare for what's next? No season is permanent. But all of them are essential. Skip a season, and you'll feel the cost later. Rush a season, and you'll carry the consequences forward. Shame yourself for being in a quiet phase, and you'll choke the very potential needed for your next breakthrough. That doesn't mean making excuses. It doesn't mean giving up. It means showing up with wisdom. Giving yourself permission to be human. To move in cycles. To evolve. To work with your natural rhythm, not against it. Because rhythm builds resilience. When you honor your cycles, your nervous system relaxes. Creativity returns. Health begins to repair. Joy slowly finds its way back. You stop living in constant urgency and start showing up with grounded intention. Balance requires rhythm. Fulfillment requires flow. And neither can exist when you're forcing a fast pace in a season meant for slowing down. The question isn't how fast can I go? The real question is, what is this season asking of me? You won't always have clear answers. But if you slow down and listen, the season will guide you. It will show you what needs your focus, what needs to be let go, what needs care, and what needs rebuilding. The wisdom is already inside you. But you have to pause long enough to hear it. You're not built to hustle endlessly. You're not failing when you take a break. You're not lazy when you need more rest. And you're certainly not broken when your clarity fades. Sometimes, you're just in winter. Sometimes, you're in the space between who you were and who you're becoming. Honor that space. Don't rush it. Don't numb it. Don't distract yourself through it. Move through it with patience and trust. Because the version of you that emerges from that quiet season, stronger, clearer, more aligned, is often the most powerful one yet. So breathe. Listen. Stop living like every month is January. Stop punishing yourself for not blooming in a season meant for shedding. Stop seeing rest as weakness. Start recognizing the deep intelligence of your own rhythm. That's how lasting balance is created, not by forcing one speed year-round, but by flowing in cycles. By working with your nature, not against it. By honoring the truth in your body, your mind, and your spirit. If you want true balance and deep fulfillment, stop chasing control and start building flexibility. Most people think control means safety. They believe if they plan every step, control every detail, and predict every challenge, they'll finally feel peace. But that's not peace. That's anxiety in disguise. It's fear hiding behind a schedule. Control feels comforting until life doesn't cooperate. Until plans fall apart. Until the unexpected shows up. And when that illusion of control breaks, what's really shaken is your identity, because you tied your stability to certainty. But peace doesn't come from certainty. It comes from capacity. From knowing you can adjust. From trusting that no matter what changes, you'll find your way. That's real balance. Not from being rigid, but from being resilient. Not from forcing life into a box, but from flowing with it without losing yourself. Fulfillment comes through movement, not perfection. The people who live full, meaningful lives aren't the ones with the most flawless plan. They're the ones who know how to adapt. To pivot. To shift focus when life asks for it. So what does flexibility look like? It looks like making plans, but holding them loosely. Setting goals, but leaving room for change. Creating structure, but not worshipping it. Moving forward, but remaining open to surprises and growth. It means being able to change direction without shame. To slow your pace without guilt. To say, this used to work, but it doesn't anymore. And that doesn't make me inconsistent. That makes me wise. Because clinging to an outdated plan doesn't mean you're committed. It means you're stuck. Flexibility isn't weakness. It's strategy. It's staying in the game long enough to win. It's changing how you get there, without changing where you're headed. It's knowing when to stay grounded, and when to let go. Because the world will keep shifting. People will change. Circumstances will evolve. And if you resist that change, if you try to live today with yesterday's framework, you will suffer. You'll burn out. You'll feel lost, not because you're broken, but because you're being called to adapt. Flexibility doesn't mean chaos. It means flow. It means your foundation is strong enough that you don't need to control every outcome. It means you trust your mindset more than your minute-by-minute schedule. It means you're willing to let go of timelines that no longer serve you. To release priorities that don't align with who you are becoming. Because growth always asks for release. And most people resist it. They cling to what used to feel safe, even when it no longer serves them. Even when it drains them. Even when it holds them back. Letting go may feel like failure. But often, it's the only way forward. The real strength lies in staying grounded through the shift. In staying flexible without losing direction. In knowing when to hold on, and when to make space for something better. Hold your roots. Evolve your strategy. Stay rooted in your values, but let your strategy grow and adapt. When your identity is built on who you are, not just what you do, you can change direction without losing yourself. You can evolve without falling apart. You can pivot without panic. It all comes down to knowing the difference between what's essential and what's just temporary. Your purpose? That's essential. Your character? Non-negotiable. Your standards, your values, your mission, these are your roots. But the way you live them out? That can evolve. That should evolve. Because if you want to stay fulfilled over time, your strategy must be flexible. What helped you 5 years ago might be holding you back now. The systems that gave you structure in one season may be suffocating in the next. What used to inspire you might no longer move you. And if you're too afraid to pivot, too proud to adapt, you won't get stuck because you're incapable. You'll get stuck because you're unwilling. Ask yourself the hard questions. Where have you become rigid? What are you clinging to because you're afraid to let go? Where do you need to loosen your grip and make space for something new? Have you confused control with clarity? Have you mistaken routine for identity? The more honestly you answer these questions, the more freedom you'll find. Because balance isn't about standing still, it's about moving in rhythm. And you can't move if you're frozen by perfectionism. You can't move if one small shift wrecks your entire world. Let go of the illusion of perfection. You don't have to get it all right. Life isn't a straight staircase. It's a spiral. You're not starting over, you're returning to old lessons with new wisdom. Every turn, every adjustment, every realization helps you grow deeper. Stronger. Wiser. The people who thrive are not the ones who control everything. They're the ones who allow themselves to evolve. So hold your vision tightly, but your plans loosely. Stay committed to your goals, but flexible in your methods. Trust your direction, but be willing to adjust your pace. Balance and fulfillment don't come from controlling everything. They come from trusting yourself enough to let go. Real fulfillment isn't just found in what you achieve, it's found in what you give. Balance isn't only about managing your time. It's about living with purpose. And one of the most overlooked paths to true fulfillment is service. Not the kind of service that burns you out. Not the kind done out of guilt or obligation. But the kind that flows from alignment, from authenticity, from your natural strengths. There's a reason people who serve from the heart often feel more joy. When you give from your strengths, you grow your soul. When you serve from your gifts, you reinforce your identity. When you contribute from your truth, you expand your impact. And impact is one of the deepest sources of meaning. We weren't designed to live self-centered, self-contained lives. We were made for contribution. For connection. For legacy. When you ignore that truth, you may still succeed, but it will feel empty. You may reach your goals, but they'll feel hollow. Because success without service is just achievement without meaning. But service doesn't mean self-sacrifice. True service doesn't diminish you, it multiplies you. It energizes you. It activates something inside of you that no amount of personal gain ever could. But for service to be fulfilling, it must come from the right place. It must come from your truth, not from a need to perform. You have to give because it's who you are, not because you want to be praised. Because the moment your service becomes about appearances instead of authenticity, you disconnect from yourself. And when that happens, your contribution loses its power. So check in with yourself. Where am I giving from? Is it from joy or from fear? From truth or from pressure? Am I offering something to make an impact or to be seen? To express my soul or to prove my worth? When you give from the right place, you don't burn out. You burn brighter. You become more alive. Not because others notice, but because you know you're being who you were meant to be. Service expands your perspective. When your focus is only on yourself, your problems, your goals, your worries, your world shrinks. Your energy becomes self-contained. You start looping the same thoughts. But the moment you check in on someone else, lend a hand, offer encouragement, you break that loop. You create space. And in helping others, you lift yourself. Fulfillment is rarely found in isolation. It's forged through contribution. Balance isn't always about doing less. Sometimes, it's about adding something deeper, something that gives your life more meaning. Not more pressure, more purpose. Service doesn't require a stage. It doesn't need a spotlight or a perfect plan. Sometimes it's a quiet check-in with a friend. Sometimes it's showing up for your family when no one else will. Sometimes it's being consistent when everyone else is not. Sometimes it's doing the right thing when nobody's watching and not needing credit for it. This kind of service, this quiet, reliable leadership, is what transforms lives. Not through grand gestures, but through steady presence. Not through speeches, but through sincerity. Not through perfection, but through authenticity. Your life has power. Your life, your voice, your story, your energy is powerful. These are tools of transformation. But they only work if you use them, not for applause, but for impact. The people who feel the most fulfilled are the ones who give their life to something bigger than themselves. They know that purpose isn't just a personal journey, it's a shared one. Your gifts weren't given for your benefit alone. They were given so you could uplift others. Encourage others. Challenge, comfort, and inspire them. So you could remind them they're not alone. This is legacy. When you live this way, you build legacy. You create ripples. You leave behind something more meaningful than your productivity, your schedule, or your income. You build meaning that isn't measured by numbers. It's measured by how deeply it's felt. That's the power of service. That's the magic of contribution. It brings rhythm to your life that personal success alone can't provide. It brings back your why when the what feels heavy. It grounds you when life feels overwhelming. It reminds you you're here for more than just checking boxes. You're here to leave people better than you found them. That doesn't require perfection. It just requires presence. Intention. A willingness to show up and pour out what you have, even when it doesn't feel like enough. Because sometimes, your small act of service is exactly what someone else needed to keep going. So don't just make space for service, build your life around it. Not as an afterthought, but as a priority. That's where real fulfillment begins. Balance is not just about getting, it's about making space. Space for giving, for impact, for legacy. Because when you live that way, fulfillment follows. You don't just feel fulfilled, you become someone worth following. If you want a life of true balance and fulfillment, you must learn to manage expectations. Not just the expectations others place on you, but the ones you place on yourself. Because expectations shape our emotions, our pressure, our entire experience. Unchecked expectations turn life into a constant state of disappointment, even when things are going well. Most people feel exhausted not because life is too hard, but because their expectations are too rigid. They've painted a picture of how things should be, and when reality doesn't match, they feel like failures. Behind. Broken. Not because something is wrong, but because their expectations were different. You expected your career to grow faster. You expected your relationships to feel easier. You expected progress to be smoother. You expected to feel happier, more accomplished, more grounded by now. And because life doesn't fit that picture, you suffer, even if the reality you're living isn't bad. But what if the problem isn't your experience? What if it's your expectation? What if you're not behind in your pace, but in your comparison? What if the pressure isn't coming from your life, but from the story you tell yourself about how your life should be? This doesn't mean lowering your standards or giving up on your goals. It means leading with perspective. Holding your expectations loosely so they don't strangle your gratitude. Rigid expectations rob you of presence. They blind you to what's working. They trap you in a loop of never enough. And there is no balance or fulfillment in that place. No matter how far you go, it's never far enough. No matter what you achieve, it's never impressive enough. No matter how much you grow, you still feel behind in your own mind. If you want peace, you must separate progress from perfection. Reality from fantasy. Who told you you had to have it all figured out by now? Who said setbacks mean failure? Who decided slow seasons mean you're off track? Sometimes, your greatest breakthroughs look like delays. Detours can be development. Waiting can be wisdom. If you focus only on the destination, you miss the transformation happening on the way. Fulfillment isn't found in everything going according to plan. It's found in learning to adjust your expectations without lowering your standards. In learning to say, this isn't what I expected, but maybe it's what I needed. In learning to stay open when life doesn't cooperate. In loving the process, not just the payoff. Yes, it's hard. We all want certainty, progress to feel linear, and effort to pay off in real time. But life isn't linear. Growth isn't clean. Success isn't a straight line. Healing is messy and unpredictable. But it's necessary. If you live under the weight of expectations that don't match reality, you'll never feel balanced or fulfilled. Your mind will always fight the moment you're in, and the more you fight, the more disconnected you become. So what do? You question your expectations. You ask, where did this come from? Is this rooted in truth or comparison? Does this reflect my values or someone else's timeline? Am I holding on because it inspires me, or because I'm afraid to let go? Then you give yourself grace. You measure your life not by perfection, but by alignment. Not by speed, but by depth. Not by external milestones, but by internal peace. You realize, it's okay if your journey looks different. It's okay if your progress is unconventional. It's okay if your timeline is yours. When you do this, something incredible happens. You feel lighter, more present, more grateful. Not because everything got easier, but because you stop punishing yourself for things you can't control. You start noticing what's working. You celebrate small wins. You give yourself credit. You enjoy the work, not just endure it. In that shift, you build motivation rooted in joy, discipline fueled by vision. This isn't lowering your standards, it's anchoring them in reality. Balance comes from the freedom to change without falling apart. Fulfillment comes from the grace to evolve without feeling behind. Both begin when you stop worshiping perfection and start honoring your path. To create lasting balance and real fulfillment, you must master presence, not just physical, but mental, emotional, and spiritual. No matter how aligned your values or how carefully you manage your energy, if you're not present, you'll miss your life. Presence isn't just mindfulness, it's integrity. Because if your body is with your family but your mind is still at work, you're not fully there. If you're working on goals but distracted by fear or doubt, you're not fully present. You can't build a fulfilling life from half-hearted presence. You start by slowing down. Build pockets of stillness into your day. Breathe without rushing. Remove noise, not just digital, but emotional. Practice single tasking. Train your brain to focus, even when it feels uncomfortable. Observe your thoughts without judgment. Ask, where is my mind right now, and gently bring it back again and again. Practice gratitude not as a list, but in your attention. Notice the taste of your food, the feel of your feet on the floor, the sound of a loved one's voice. Learn to love the quiet spaces between moments, spaces that once felt empty but are actually full of life. Presence means letting go, the need to rush, to control, to fix everything. It means trusting that who you are and where you are is enough for this moment. Showing up fully is more powerful than showing up perfectly. Balance is built in pauses. Fulfillment is found in the spaces between. If you never stop moving, you'll never feel them. You'll live life in a hurry and always feel behind. You'll race to milestones and miss the miracle of the moment. Presence brings peace, not because it fixes everything, but because it reminds you, everything is happening now. And now is where your power lives. Power to choose. Power to change. Power to connect. Power to feel. When you live from that place, not once in a while, but every day, you build a life that is not just full, but fulfilled. Not just scheduled, but sacred. Not waiting to be enjoyed someday, but savored today. Right here, in this breath, this step, this ordinary, beautiful moment. You don't find balance, you build it. You don't stumble into fulfillment, you create it, day by day, choice by choice, habit by habit. No one can do it for you. No one else knows what your soul needs. Your peace is your responsibility. The world will pull you every way, but you know better now. Real success is building a life that doesn't require you to escape from it. Balance doesn't mean perfect, it means aligned. Fulfillment means living your truth, fully and with intention. You were built for this kind of life. One with depth. One with meaning. One with balance. Because you chose to live it that way. Remember, balance isn't about having everything perfect, it's about living your truth with intention and grace. The power to build a fulfilled life is in your hands, one choice, one moment at a time. So, stop chasing perfection and start creating the life you deserve today.